Oh, houses wherein men have lived and died are haunted houses. Through the open doors, the harmless phantoms on their errands glide. With feet that make no sound upon the floors.
Listening to macabre.fm, Haunted Heartland 2022. Now here are your hosts, Austin Ulmer and Jack McGonigal.
It's Haunted Heartland 2022, everybody. Getting pretty spooky in here, Jack. What do you think?
It is. It's getting a little spooky. The lighting's got me a little spooked in here. Just a little lantern on. And it is my first Haunted Heartland, and excited to be here, Austin.
Yeah, it's going to be a fun one. This is always a fun and exciting time of year for Mav Radio. Especially to get into the Halloween spirit. Yeah, I don't know about you, Jack, but I'm a big Halloween fan. I love the fall weather, and this time of year. Just gets me in the mood, go home, watch some horror movies, I always like doing that.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's all about, what I want to do when I go home after this is throw on an old 1980s slasher movie.
Oh, yeah, those are the best.
I don't know, make myself a bowl of popcorn. Yeah, and the weather's been awesome so far. Nothing too cold yet. Got the pretty leaves out. I'm not a big dress up in a, weird costume kind of guy. But
no?
Ditch that, but everything else, I'm like.
What was the last costume you wore?
I think I've went to Walmart and found some cheap fruit suit, and I was a banana for like the last 2 years.
Yeah. I think the last one I did, I went as a recycling bin. So I just taped a bunch of recyclables to myself. And
I think we're going to need to see a picture of that one.
I could probably dig one up for you. It was quite a while ago, but... Do you have any creepy stories or anything around this time? Ghost stories, anything like that?
A little bit. I got some creepy ones. The neighbors, they moved out, always had this black cat running around. You know what black cat means? It's never a good sign.
Bad luck.
Yeah, they're kind of creepy.
I have a black cat at home.
Don't bring it anywhere near me then. Got the green eyes. It kind of creeps me out a little bit. And then we've had bats in our house numerous times.
Really?
I remember a story, one of my siblings sleeping middle of the night, and something just flies across her face.
Ooh.
Gets up and looking around, there's a bat in the corner of her room at 4 a.m. Just freaked her out. That's about the creepiest thing. Nothing paranormal, thankfully.
No ghosts,
keep it that way.
Experiences or anything?
I don't think so, but I guess creepy animals around my house is probably the closest thing I have to a ghost story. I'm not very good with that. Austin, what about you?
So I'm from Grand Island originally, and there used to be this spot outside of town off the highway of Grand Island on the way to Hastings, Nebraska. Okay.
Oh, yeah. Just going south. You're past Donovan Trumbull.
Yep. A little before there used to be this little old rickety bridge they called Witch's Bridge. So we used to go out there.
That's creepy.
And there was this legend,
Oh, it's always the myth, the legendary myth.
Yeah,
legend,
this witch lived in this small shack that was in the middle of these woods. Looked untouched, but we'd go out there at night and you'd see a shadow, a figure out there by this shack. Whether it was a witch or not, I don't know. And driving over the bridge, it was always sketchy.
Yeah,
I don't know if that's still there.
Rickety, am I going to make it over?
That's probably my only experience, though, with that. But it was creepy going out there.
Is that shack still around? Or
I'm not sure. I need to go investigate next time I'm in Grand Island.
Next time you're in Grand Island, you got to
Witch's Bridge.
Bring the family out there. And
That's right, making a family outing.
It's a little less creepy when you're with a group of people.
Yeah, so we got some fun stories coming up, so everyone stay tuned. Our next one to kick things off for Haunted Heartland. It's a little Haunted Heartland retrospective. Hannah Wheelock did some investigating to past Haunted Heartlands, did some interviews, and she's going to kind of give us the history of this radio program to get things going. So make sure you tune in after the break right here on mavradio.fm.
The first stories aired on Haunted Heartland included the investigation of the on-campus murder of Carolyn Nevins that remains unsolved nearly 5 decades later, the haunting of Arts and Sciences Hall's 4th floor, and the region's favorite fall attraction and largest pumpkin patch. Brownlee says as long as there are stories to tell, this broadcast will remain a staple in the MAV radio programming. And Hannah, we have Hannah Wheelock live right here on the phone. And Hannah, you're out on site.
Hi,
Where are you at right now?
What's that?
And Hannah, first question,
Can you hear me?
what made you interested in doing this story here?
Well, it's been such a long standing tradition for MAV Radio that I wanted to know what went into making something so unique stand for so long and why we keep doing it every single year.
And throughout, getting ready for this radio show, what's something you learned that you just found fascinating while doing your story?
In terms of Haunted Heartland, it was interesting to learn that they've had something new every single year. I thought that they would definitely have some repeat stories, having the same things over and over, but Megan really stressed that it's been totally different every single year.
All right. Thanks, Hannah.
Thanks, guys.
Our next story is provided by Derek Shadle. Now, this is a creepy one. It's a little history of Omaha, Jack, and it's all about some tunnels that I never heard about until I heard this story.
No, me neither. I was like, tunnels? So I'm really interested to hear this story. I haven't heard it yet, so yeah, I'm looking forward to this one.
Yeah, so more than 100 years ago, you could work as a tunneler. It was a dangerous profession with the risk of cave-ins and premature explosions incredibly high. The tunnels, though, were wildly important for transporting of goods, weapons, and keeping folks safe. These tunnelers became restricted throughout the world. Their skills were recognized, especially for fighting during World War I. Omaha has its own series of tunnels, while nearly all of them are either sealed or caved in now. These tunnels were an integral part to Omaha in the early 20th century. Reporter Derek Shadle explains how these tunnels fueled Omaha's darkest machine in history.
It's the 1850s in Omaha, and the winters are borderline unbearable. Blizzards are causing the citizens of Omaha to stay indoors. To fight the harsh winters, Omaha would eventually build steam tunnels to help supply heat to buildings around downtown. One building would function as the central boiler, effectively creating the heat, and the tunnels would move the steam throughout Omaha and into select buildings around downtown. Eventually, when the citizens of Omaha wanted to leave their building, they would use the steam tunnels to comfortably travel from building to building. But the steam tunnels simultaneously worked as the perfect system to travel around the city with complete anonymity. Omaha history teacher Patrick Ryan says,
it was used for good and for legal and not so legal stuff.
Within the early decades of Omaha, the city was commonly known as a wide open city, which meant that crimes such as prostitution and gambling was wildly popular, with little to no resistance from the authorities. In the late 1860s, a woman by the name of Anna Wilson arrived at Omaha. Not much was known about Anna prior to her arrival in Omaha, but she was in a relationship with a notorious gambler named Dan Allen, who had successfully convinced her to move from New Orleans to Omaha with him. Very shortly after arriving in Omaha, they would play major roles within Omaha's gambling and prostitution rings. Dan found major success in running a gambling parlor within Omaha's infamous sporting district. patrons would enter by going through the steam tunnels before coming out in the basement in the building. From there, they could go to the gambling parlor on the second floor or use the pawn shop on the first floor to make some money to gamble, which was also ran by Dan Allen. However, it was Anna Wilson who found the most success in her business venture.
Anna Wilson, who was our madam, if you will.
Anna Wilson established Omaha's first serious brothel house. She had purchased a building with 25 different rooms for business, of course. Patrons would enter the building through the tunnels, which made their business transactions completely anonymous to the public.
She basically owned the reputation of these men because as they would come and go through the steam tunnels, nobody actually saw them come in and out of the house. And so by doing so, she interacted with these men of note. I mean, I could give you a laundry list of the big landowners of the time who frequented her house of prostitution. She basically, like I said, she owned the reputation of these guys, these gentlemen. And just by surely seeing them on the street as they were going back, doing her daily business, it would be, if she were to acknowledge in front of his wife, let's say, that he knew her or she knew him, a lot of uncomfortable questions would be asked.
Anna Wilson's brothel house had eventually become so popular that dozens of rich landowners and other powerful men around Omaha became frequent customers at Anna's business.
It just really highlights a woman who, in a time, had extreme power in a time where women didn't have power. Women were identified as basically affiliated with whomever their significant other was, their husband, boyfriend, whatnot. But because of Dan Allen being they were never married because Dan Allen and Anna Wilson were never married because of who they were. No church would touch him because he's a gambler, she's a prostitute, but she was exclusive to him and ran this house.
Anna had become so successful that she could match any wealthy landowner in the area dollar for dollar. With the help of the tunnels, Anna became Omaha's wealthiest and most powerful woman in the late 1800s. Anna would soon be known as the Queen of the Underworld. Eventually, her romantic partner, Dan Allen, would pass away of typhoid in 1884, and Anna would leave the prostitution business soon after. They were still one of the wealthiest couples within Omaha at the time. So Anna would buy them a 20 by 30 burial plot at Omaha's most exclusive cemetery, Prospect Hill. Wealthy landowners and businessmen often sought to be buried in the cemetery after they had passed. But ironically, most of the men buried there were the brothel's most frequent customers. After Anna had buried Dan in Prospect Hill, she wanted to ensure that her and Dan would be buried together forever.
So when she was to be buried, she knew full well, because of who she was and what she did and how she was known in the community, she knew full well they were going to dig her up and move. Once they put her in the grave, they were going to dig her up and move her somewhere else. These wealthy landowners and whatnot are not going to be, would never be buried in an area that a prostitute would be buried in.
Anna Wilson wrote to her executor in her will that when her casket is placed within the hole for her grave, that 5 to 6 feet of concrete was to be poured on top of the casket, and to top it off, a large granite slab would be placed over their graves, ensuring that Prospect Hill would be their final resting place. Anna Wilson eventually died on October 27, 1911. However, she did have one special request for her 25-room brothel house.
In her will, she said that house will be a medical facility for women and children exclusively. Reverend Clarkson, who's Episcopal minister, he oversaw the running of that medical facility from Anna Wilson, and that became Clarkson Hospital, that we all know that's over by the Med Center.
For years, the activity in the tunnels would drastically slow down.
Now won't you listen, honey, while I say, how could you tell me that you're going away? Don't say that.
However, a man named Tom Dennison had arrived at Omaha nearly a decade earlier with $75,000 off of gambling parlors he had owned in Colorado and Montana. He was often referred to as King Gambler. When he arrived at Omaha in 1900, he noticed that most of the crime around Omaha was unorganized. So he took this opportunity to organize it. Dennison got a hold of a man named Cowboy Jim Dahlman, a man who had always wanted to be mayor, but not want to do any of the work. So Dennison, as the brains, and Dahlman, as the frontman, got to work. Omaha history teacher William Deardoff says,
Dennison's real genius was going to the people in Omaha that had no voice. He went to North Omaha and he had a fixer on North 24th Street. He went to Little Italy and he had a fixer there. He had a fixer in Little Bohemia. The ethnic groups that came to Omaha individually had very little power. But on election day, if they voted for Dennison's guy, then the neighborhood fixer, when they needed jobs, when they needed to hire firemen or street workers, then that's who they hired. Thanksgiving, Dennison's guys passed out turkeys and food. And it was a way that those people could have a connection. So Dennison used a lot of groups like that had no power and organized them.
Their plan paid off, as Jim Dahlman would be elected in 1906, effectively granting Tom Dennison a major power grab over the government of Omaha.
Tom Dennison's chauffeur was a police lieutenant. His hitman was a police sergeant, or enforcer was a police sergeant with the moral squad.
In 1917, Nebraska would ban the sale of liquor 2 years before the federal government would enact prohibition. However, Dennison had a plan to protect his interests. He had created liquor stills all across Omaha, and each of them would be connected to the steam tunnels, effectively keeping his operation out of sight.
So even though they had police protection, that didn't mean that there wasn't some problems, and there were still federal agents, federal prohibition agents in Omaha, so they still wanted to keep the stuff kind of out of sight. And there were a lot of people that just didn't want to know their business known.
The liquor would be transported from his stills to numerous speakeasies connected to the tunnels. Each of these speakeasies paid an operation fee to Dennison, and shortly after, all the gambling parlors would be in his operation too. Speakeasies, stills, and gambling parlors, all accessible through the steam tunnels. Tom Dennison had just created a monopoly on crime. Dennison not only financially thrived off the secrecy of the tunnels, he expanded them too, as he eventually had his guys dig more tunnels to places such as the Flatiron Building, more speakeasies, and even some of his houses.
He had one house by Marion High School out by Skyline Villa. That was his country estate. That's where he raised dogs. He also has a house up on Florence Boulevard. And in the basement of that house, going out the back, is a tunnel. So basically kind of like a rabbit hole. If the police come through the front door, he could always go out the back. And there's some other houses there on Florence Boulevard where there are tunnels out of the basement and in the back.
Everything was starting to come together for the Dennison machine. But Jim Dahlman would eventually fail to get elected in 1918, stripping Dahlman and Dennison of all their power.
A guy by the name of Ed Smith gets elected, and he's a reformer. And he tells the police you can no longer, take bribes, you got to clean the city up. Everybody thought that'd be the end of the Dennison machine, but instead, Dennison was able to maneuver it.
Dennison would spend this time fueling a lot of racial hatred to oppose the reformed mayor. The Omaha Bee, a newspaper that was in favor of Dennison, began to push stories that would continue to stir more racial tension within Omaha. Many of the stories would falsely accuse black men of attacking white women, which would end in the story questioning the legitimacy of the new mayor. On September 28, 1919, a white mob formed outside the courthouse. Inside was Will Brown, who had been falsely accused of assaulting a white woman just days before. The mob grew furious and out of control. The mob burst into the courthouse with rage, turning the situation into a full-scale riot. They began to start a fire in the courthouse and fire their guns at the building. Eventually, they found Will Brown and drug him outside, lynching him on a light pole outside of the courthouse.
And when the reform mayor came out to confront the crowd and ask him, do you want to live in a town basically where no trials and we lynch people? And somebody in the mob started screaming, yeah, and they threw a brick and hit the mayor. And they actually hung the mayor. They did not kill him, but they did hang him. He got cut down. But after that, in the next election, Dennison's guy gets reelected.
The Dennison machine would continue for another decade, having complete control over the government, police, and the crime. Mayor Jim Dahlman would eventually die in office in 1930, striking the first major blow to the Dennison machine. In 1931, A prominent businessman named Harry Lapidus would begin to further question the Dennison machine, bringing attention to the large number of crimes occurring in Omaha. On December 22, 1931, Lapidus would be shot dead in his car. At the time, no one knew who the murderer was, but they had an idea of who called the attack. Wealthy businessmen around Omaha grew furious at the death of Harry Lapidus, and shortly after, they would alert the federal government. In 1932, the feds would finally execute a major crime sweep across Omaha, putting Tom Dennison and nearly all of his men on trial.
And the trial's in the news every day. And that exposes to the people in Omaha the corruption in Omaha of all the people involved. And because of that, that really means that the syndicate can no longer operate with impunity because people know how it works and it's exposed. After the trial, Dennison is let off. He's gotten off because the jury was a hung jury. Very probably the Dennison machine got to a couple of jurors and fixed it.
After Dennison was let off, he decided to travel to California to hide from the public eye and the authorities. But one afternoon, Tom Dennison goes out for a drive when all of a sudden, a dog runs into the street. Dennison swerves out of the way, nearly missing the dog, but he crashes his car, killing him instantly. And as Omaha knew it, the Dennison machine came to a halt. Steam tunnels soon became a thing of the past as technology advanced throughout the decades. The steam tunnels remained abandoned, underground, and forgotten by the residents of Omaha.
You go down to the old market where the ConAgra campus is. The old market literally was twice its size. So the downtown area with the steam tunnels you can only imagine what there possibly could be on the east side of 10th Street to the river. What was there, because take the old market and just carbon copy it to the east side of 10th Street and you would have had it, and you would have had the facilities, the warehousing and whatnot over there, and possibly the tunnels continuing.
Just waiting to be discovered.
But they still find a lot of stuff. Years ago, one of my friends who worked for MUD was working with tobacco, and they basically found by accident one of the cisterns they had along Dodge Street for water. That's kind of like a area that they pump water in, and then they could put hoses down there and pump it way before we had hydrants. And they had no idea they were there. And after one of the backhoes backed into it and started to sink, they found that out. And then they had to go back and look through all the records. I suspect when you look at all the tunnels, stuff like that, it'd be the same thing.
So next time you're in the old market, just remember that you might be walking on top of Omaha's strangest and most forgotten piece of history. Reporting for MAV Radio, I'm Derek Shadle.
Those Omaha secrets and the men who wanted them to remain that way are long since gone. And, well, we have reporter Derek Shadle on the line, who is live with us at Prospect Hill, which is the burial site of Anna Wilson and Dan Allen. So, Derek, how are you doing out there? How were you able to even confirm if these tunnels existed?
Oh, man, yeah. It's a whole long story, looking online to these tunnels, there's just nothing concrete about it. It's just all these rumors and, various news articles about these tunnels that just somehow happen to be in the basement of these stores in the old market. So after doing some digging around, I eventually found a history post about the usage of steam tunnels, and from there I got in contact with Patrick Ryan and William Deardoff, who you just heard on the story, and they had a lot of information to give me about it, and it was just wonderful. But I'm currently at the actual gravesite of Dan Allen and Anna Wilson, and I can confirm there's a massive 12-inch of just a granite slab, massive, and there's a crack underneath it, so you can actually see some of the concrete just kind of falling out of it too. It's just a massive grave.
Wow, that's pretty cool. So are people still able to visit these tunnels?
What was that?
Are people still able to visit these tunnels?
That it is near impossible, honestly. There are people that still have these tunnels that are connected to their house, are in the shops in the old market, but they're either being used for storage or they're completely just dangerous to go in. They're caved in or sealed off to prevent anyone from going down there. They do still give tours at one of Tom Dennison's houses. I think it's the one on Farnham Street. It's mentioned in the story. You were able to see the entrance to the tunnel in his backyard, but you're not able to go that far in there.
Wow. So why do you think it is that these steam tunnels are mostly forgotten by Omaha?
I think it's just the advancement of technology. Steam tunnels just really had no purpose anymore. We got way better heating today, obviously. So, these things just remained underground, and somehow it's just, they still just kind of discover them. As mentioned at the end of the story with Deerdorf, the MD just a underground tunnel next to Dodge, and that's firefighters when they need to pump water out and put out a fire. So it's just kind of amazing that architecture that worked as a machine for Omaha really is just forgotten, this lost underneath the surface.
Yeah, well, thanks so much, Derek. What a great story. I had no idea about this until I heard your story, so it really blew my mind. So thanks so much, Derek.
Awesome. Thank you, guys.
Wow, Jack, what a way to kick things off. Haunted Heartland 2022.
2 great stories and a lot more to come. I'm excited for the rest of the night, Austin.
Yeah, we're just getting ramped up here, so don't go anywhere. We got a story coming up about a creepy hatchet house in Papillion. It's Haunted Heartland 2022 right here on mavradio.fm.
Hello, this is the Prince of Darkness. Tune in to mavradio.fm on October 27th at 6 p.m. for Haunted Heartland. It's going to be a frightening time. Oh, bloody.
Hey, you can't cuss.
If I can't cuss, what the am I going to talk about?
Haunted Heartland exclusively on mavradio.fm, October 27th at 6 p.m. Powered with
Sharon!
Oh, come inside, my pretty.
Located in Papillion, Nebraska, is a one-room schoolhouse that is on the list of Nebraska historical sites. It was purchased 30 years ago and moved from the now-defunct town of Portal to its current home. Reporter Luke Wazinkiewicz brings us the story of the Papillion Hatchet House.
According to the legend, the Portal House is a schoolhouse where a teacher in the early 1960s, by all accounts, was a kind woman until one fateful day when something snapped. She reportedly lost her temper and committed an unthinkable atrocity. Took up a hatchet, blocked the building's exit, and then methodically and ruthlessly murdered each and every one of her students. Now this one-story, single-room building is known as the Hatchet House, but that was the legend, and this is where the real story begins. There is simply no corroborating evidence that this murderous rampage ever happened. No books, websites, personal interviews, and most importantly, no legal records to prove the teacher or even the students ever existed. Jamie Nuss spent her childhood as a student in the one-room country schoolhouse. She had 28 classmates, kindergarten through 4th grade. They spent their weekdays crossing their T's and dotting their I's on chalkboards at the original Portal Schoolhouse in Portal, Nebraska. She says it was an idyllic age.
They always had a huge garden, and in the beginning of the school year, they always had watermelons.
As the years passed, the peaceful little one-room schoolhouse fell into disrepair and vandals took advantage, looking for the proclaimed Hatchet House killer. When asked about the Hatchet House myth, Julie Kaysen, the president of the Papillion Historical Society, stated,
They didn't have anything else to do, so they were driving out in the country, drinking beer, and with their girlfriends, and then, oh yeah, it sounds like a hard itself, dark.
A Along with this myth, there was thousands of dollars in damage done to this historical landmark. When asked about the damage, Nuss added,
There was damage. In fact, that's why they didn't replace the windows and things. They said they couldn't afford to keep it up the way they were doing it.
She recalls getting a phone call in the mornings asking them to wear their working clothes so they could sweep up the broken glass from the windows due to people damaging property in search of the Hatchet House ghost. On numerous occasions, the school bell was stolen and replaced only to have it stolen again.
And they didn't have a veil after a certain time either because they would apparently take the veil down.
Steal it.
So it wasn't anything just for a little bit of fun. It was got to be expensive. And a lot of the windows they didn't bother putting back in. They just left them boarded up.
For this interview, I interviewed Shirley Ertz, who is a longtime member of the Papillion Historical Society, Diane Pegler, the vice president, and Julie Kaysen, the president of the Historical Society, as well as UNO professor Dr. James Wilson, along with Portal School student Jamie Nuss. When asked about the run-ins with the Hatchet House myth, it was a resounding,
It's like I told you, I never even heard of that till today.
Diane Pegler also added,
So I volunteered here for a long time, and Shirley works in the base. We work in the basement. That's where we have our archival items. And no, never.
The myth has had a major effect on the Portal Schoolhouse in terms of vandalism and destruction. But the Historical Society is trying to push that narrative aside and promote family-friendly activities in and around the schoolhouse. The Historical Society still welcomes over 1,000 children into the school during Pioneer Days, and it is a concern for the Historical Society because of the ongoing claims that it is haunted. Then again, there is still no foundation to any of those claims. The schoolhouse is a place to learn and teach Nebraska history. It may seem fun or funny for some adults to tell this haunting story. However, it is not the type of story for young children who visit the school. They deserve to have a safe experience to learn about Nebraska history. Professor James Wilson summed it up perfectly by saying,
For me, like the actual history and the facts that go with the place is way more interesting than any ghost story, you know.
So before going out and making assumptions on ghost stories and myths of this kind, please do your research about the historical monuments in and around your area. I'm Luke Wazenkevich for MavRadio.fm.
Portal House is open for most holidays like Thanksgiving and Christmas for celebrating certain events in Papillion. The Portal Schoolhouse is located at 242 North Jefferson Street in Papillion. And Luke, what can you tell us about the place you are right at now? Describe the experience.
Yeah, so right now I'm standing right in front of the Portal Schoolhouse, as mentioned before, and, you know, it's an old school, but it's cool because they switched the school from Portal, Nebraska after a flood and brought it here to Papillion, so it's a nice little historical landmark right in front of the courthouse here in Papillion.
Has there been any proof of the Hatchet House killer's ghost being in the schoolhouse?
No. After talking to the Papillion Historical Society, they've been here. They've been in the basements until midnight, 2 a.m., 3 a.m., and they've never encountered anything. So taking it from them, the people being in there as long as they did, no evidence whatsoever.
I just got to ask, why do you think people believed in the myth?
You know, after talking to everybody for this interview and looking up stuff, it kind of feels like back in the day, people were just trying to get some old country folk tale story out there to kind of scare some little kids or something around the campfire. So nothing too harsh.
All right, thanks, Luke. That was an awesome story.
Wow,
Yeah,
I'm a little creeped out after that one, Jack.
Yeah, that's a little strange. That's one of many spooky stories we have here on this Haunted Heartland 2022.
Yeah, so now we're going to go from kind of a spooky story, Jack, to like one about a festival that's lived on for years and years, centuries. So you've probably been told by a Halloween special or a cheesy horror movie that the veil between our world and the world of the occult is the thinnest during Halloween. Reporter Jamie Harvey tells us more that this belief predates those campy pop culture staples by hundreds of years and is part of an ancient festival that still lives on.
Before Halloween, and even before the Christian celebration of All Hallows Eve, there was Samhain, a Celtic festival celebrating the end of summer, the end of the harvest, and
in Ireland or in pre-Christian Celtic countries, it's also tentatively thought to be the new year.
That's Celtic pagan and Irish polytheist Alec Maguire. They are the sole proprietor of Sea Light Spirituality, a small business focusing on divination and spiritual counseling.
It was a very liminal time, so it was commemorating the changing of the seasons from summer to winter, the transition we would know as fall.
The celebration begins at sunset and goes until sunset the next day.
Celtic calendars marked the day beginning at sunset, not sunrise.
It's difficult to tell precisely how old Samhain is.
There was a superstitious belief that writing something down would make it no longer sacred.
But most sources suggest that it's been celebrated for at least 2,000 years. And despite all the social, political, and religious upheavals of the past centuries, from the Black Death to COVID-19, the festival never really went away.
It just morphed. Historically speaking, it's very similar to how you would think of Halloween in America.
Like 21st century Americans celebrating Halloween, ancient Celts would
dressing up as like a spook or a ghoul, something scary.
They'd bob for apples.
Selling like ghost stories was very common.
They would even go up to people's doors and threaten to play a trick on the house if not given treats.
Those treats could have been candy, but would have been like maybe like some coins or something to help with the festivities for the younger folk.
These customs survived in Celtic regions, and in Ireland in particular, for centuries, and were brought to the United States by Irish immigrants.
Coming to America, keeping those traditions alive.
However, not all aspects of the ancient festival made it into mainstream Halloween. Divination was a common practice during Samhain. For example, unwed people curious about who they would marry would pour hot lead through the eye of a needle into water.
And then whatever letter that made was going to be your husband's first initial or your spouse's first initial or your wife's first initial.
The festival had and still has a distinctly spiritual aspect. For fairies and spirits,
the space between their world and our world was considered and still is considered to be very thin during Samhain times.
People told stories of waking up in the middle of the night during Samhain to see dead relatives at their hearths. It's also believed that the good folk, also known as fairies, can more easily pass into our world during Samhain, while the barrier between their realm and ours is at its thinnest. Quick note, don't be fooled by the name good folk. Fairies can be f***ing terrifying. The spiritual aspects of Samhain, forgotten or sensationalized by modern pop culture, are still celebrated by modern Celtic pagans today. Many pagans still reach out to those who came before, practice divination, and honor their ancestors.
People like myself will definitely lean into the ancestor aspect of Samhain. It's a great time to honor the dead, remember the dead, share stories of the dead.
Wiccans, followers of a modern pagan faith popularized by occultist and author Gerald Gardner in the 1950s, also celebrate the festival.
Samhain, celebrated by Wiccans, is very similar to how like an Irish polytheist like myself would celebrate Samhain. It is considered in most Wicca covens to be the new year.
And more people might be celebrating Samhain than you think. There are about 1.5 million people in the United States that identify as pagan or Wiccan. That's more than the 1.4 million members of the mainline Presbyterian Church. And although not all pagans partake in the festival, many do.
Andrew is a Celtic pagan who plans to celebrate Samhain by connecting with and honoring his grandmother and great-grandmother.
My grandmother herself believed a lot in magic. She believed a lot in intention. And my great-grandmother was the matriarch of our family before she passed on. So it's important for me to commune with the people who were sort of authority on magic before I came around. It's a day where you can connect with people who have already passed on. And I think it's very important to remember your past.
The commemoration of Samhain is meaningful for many modern pagans because
it's very important to honor one's ancestors, taking a time of the year to pay gratitude to everyone who made you who you are. I am not trying to advocate that people get in touch with abusive family members, living or dead, but there are ancestors that go back before written record, before memory, that also deserve to be recognized and honored.
That being said,
I mean, if you want to call up Grandma Alice, like, go ahead, get that Ouija board. It's a good time to do it.
However, be careful when you're messing around with spirits, because even though ancient Samhain might not have been as blood-curdling as modern-day horror films make it out to be,
it was a time to be careful, and that's been passed down still.
For mavradio.fm, I'm Jamie Harvey.
To get into the spirit of the holiday, Jamie Harvey is sitting by a crackling flame right now. Jamie, how does it feel to be sitting by that fire?
Oh, it's wonderful. It's nice and warm, and the air is smoky. It's just a good time.
Where can we learn about more traditional Celtic holidays like Samhain?
There's this great book called A Year in Ireland by Kevin Donahue. It talks not only about Samhain, but also about other traditional holidays like Imbolc and Beltane.
Okay, well, I got to ask, why are fairies so scary? Aren't they just adorable little people with wings?
Oh, they are absolutely not. Never accept any gifts from a fairy, because if you accept a gift from a fairy, folklore tells us that they can take you into their world for eternity.
Interesting. And how do we know about all these traditions if people in Ireland didn't write about them?
Well, basically, Christian monks came in, and yes, there was some cultural steamrolling that happened, but Christian monks were also really great scholars of the time, and they actually wrote down a lot of these traditions.
Well, thank you so much, Jamie. All right, Jack, we're just got things steamrolling now.
I'd say we're 4 for 4 on the night.
Yeah, it's been a lot of fun. We got some more awesome stories coming up. Our next one's all about the dead and the spirits that come along with it. So don't go anywhere. It's Haunted Heartland 2022 on mavradio.fm.
Prepare yourself for another skeleton war because you're listening to the spookiest show of the year, Haunted Heartland on mavradio.fm.
Spooky, scary skeletons and shivers down your spine. Shrieking skulls will shock your soul, seal your doom tonight.
Shh, be quiet. All right, but I'm scared. Just stay quiet. Keep moving. I'm trying, but look at those things. That's scary. Just don't look. Keep your eyes forward. Look out, there's one right there.
Welcome to Haunted Heartland on mavradio.fm.
Hey witches and reapers and ghouls a many. More of Mav Radio's Haunted Heartland is coming up. Keep tuning in for more hollow-rific stories and stay spooky.
Jamie Nestrall, owner of Midwest Paranormal History Tours, knows all about ghosts and the technology that can be used to uncover them. She has experienced many spiritual encounters and has heard many stories as she is a paranormal ghost tour guide for her business.
Born blind, and he said that he always heard a little girl in the house playing, talking, just doing things like that.
If you haven't heard of this before, researchers from the University of Washington have uncovered that those who have been blind the majority of their lives are susceptible to being more aware of sound, as they don't have visual distractions as those with sight would have.
She said with him being blind, all of his other senses were just through the roof.
The weird thing is no one else heard this spirit except for the man who was blind. But sometimes, in some cases, the whole family experiences the same paranormal activity. In Jackson Pluger's case, it wasn't just him who was aware. Everyone in his home at the time heard or saw this evil spirit, but not everyone was hurt, just him.
I was the only one in my house. I must have been 10 years old. I was at the top of my stairs in my old home, and someone not just touched me, but grabbed my clothes and threw me down the stairs.
This was a very traumatizing moment for Jackson, something he will never forget for the rest of his life. Jackson isn't the only one, though, that has been through a moment like this. Marilyn and Sarah had a terrible experience growing up, too, but with a possession encounter, she nearly died.
He got up and tried choking me. His brother that was there had to literally pull him off of me, or he probably would have killed me.
She said that she also heard noises coming from the basement stairs.
And all of a sudden we heard somebody stomping up the steps.
Marilyn and her friends had been playing with a Ouija board. Evidently, Ouija boards have been known to open a dimension for spirits to communicate through. It's important to note that these seances don't always end well. Just like with Marilyn's case, it seems that spirits are able to possess people through a Ouija board and transform one's look and personality. The oddest thing about this is that it is common. Heard of the 1973 film The Exorcist? The film and book was based on the real-life exorcism of Roland Doe, who had only been 13. Roland experienced possessions after expressing interest in Ouija boards. And just like the Roland Doe case, most people have no idea that they're being taken over by a spirit. They usually can't remember a thing about it.
They told him what he did, and he was apologizing and crying, and he didn't know what came over him either.
As said before, Ouija boards have been around for over 100 years. They came to be in the late 19th century when America became obsessed with spiritualism. Interestingly enough, no one is quite sure where the idea of the board came from, but people don't care about the unclear history. The boards are just too intriguing.
The Ouija board is a very interesting topic, and a lot of people just won't even touch it. I am much more of a believer. If you are trying to contact the other side.
After Marilyn's experience, she will never, ever put her hands on another one.
It was so scary that I won't even allow a Ouija board in my house.
Ouija boards are just one way to communicate with the deceased. What about EVPs? For those who don't know, EVP stands for Electronic Voice Phenomenon, and these phenomenons can be recorded on any sort of device. Jamie met a young family who recorded their own EVP without knowing it, only to hear a mysterious voice decades later. The voice was talking to their newborn baby.
Years later, they put the video in to watch the tape of the baby. And in the middle of the tape, the TV goes snowy and a man's voice comes on and says, "You don't know how lucky you are."
If you're thinking about hunting ghosts, just remember that it is always important to stay respectful and definitely try your best to keep spirits from following you. Good luck, everyone, and happy Halloween. We got Dayton on the line. Can you tell us just a bit more about the history and about the cemetery in Jewel Park?
Yeah, so the cemetery was first used in 1856, and it has about 4,000 graves now. There are both Native Americans and veterans lying there in the cemetery. Jewel Park actually used to be an old radio stadium. But yeah, it's pretty creepy, and they're pretty close to each other.
Has Jamie Nestraw experienced any paranormal activity out there?
Yeah, she shared us a couple of her stories on the tour that I went on with her and some other people. She told me that she actually saw a giant shadow standing on the road along the way down to Jewel Park and the cemetery. Both her and her daughter actually saw it at different times. In that foresty area I was talking about, other people on the tours have also said that they've seen a woman in a white dress. Yeah.
Another creepy one there, Jack.
That one got me a little bit.
Yeah?
Chills on the arms, hair's going up. Yeah, absolutely.
I know we got the shades pulled down in here just a little bit, and it's getting dark outside
now.
So.
It's getting dark out, and, those guys all out in the field are under the moonlight and in some creepy areas. Hopefully they're bunched together and they're okay out there.
Well, and you know what they say about the spirits coming out at night.
Oh, yeah,
so.
They're out at night. They sleep during the day, and they are all out at nighttime. It's like nocturnal.
Yeah, that's right. Well, speaking of sleeping, to get us ready for our research on dreams, we took a quick radio survey of our colleagues in the School of Communication. Number one sources for wacky dreams, they say, you guessed it, Jack, anxiety.
Recently, in the last month, I've been starting to have nightmares more frequently. And the one I had the other night, I was in a play. I was doing a theatrical performance, and I was still I still had a script. I didn't know any of my lines, so I was really nervous, and public embarrassment is a big fear of mine. And then I walk on stage, and I'm not wearing any clothes, which is really weird. So now I'm naked. I'm holding a script. I'm trying to cover myself, but I can't see the audience, and I can't see anybody else in the play. It's just me, alone, scared, on a stage. So I thought that was terrifying, personally.
I don't necessarily dream on a regular basis. Most of my dreams are stress dreams. So I had dreams last night because I'm a little stressed for this newscast. But yeah, that's generally the only time I dream.
sometimes I dream and just like, especially when when I'm stressed, I'll dream, and then also sometimes I'll just randomly dream, and then sometimes I'll have funky dreams that are probably significant in some way, but that I don't want to look too closely at.
Yeah, I remember my dreams all the time. And I always have like nightmares, either where I die or I get injured or, something bad happens to me. Every one of my dreams.
Yeah, I have a recurring dream where I'm being chased and the ending is different. The process is the same, just that once they have a gun and in one of them I have been shot.
Sometimes I'll have pleasant dreams, but most of the time they're stress dreams.
Are you okay?
I mean, I don't sleep very well in the first place, so I got a lot of issues, so.
I don't sleep well either. I never have. I take, should put this on record, but I take Ambien every night.
It was like a drug deal that went bad, and this guy came in and he's like, give me my money, and the other guy's like, well, I can't say this.
That's when we are more open to having spirits talk to us because we don't have all the other crap cluttering our brains. I mean, what do you guys think about that? Is it just our brains misfiring, or is it a time for something more spiritual or on a different plane?
I've had friends that have died that come and talk to me in dreams multiple times.
This is kind of a very personal question, but I feel comfortable saying that, I think some weird stuff happens in dreams sometimes.
I usually just feel like I go to bed and then I'm up 2 minutes later. That's what it always feels like when I sleep. So to be having dreams right now in my life is very strange. And I know it's probably due to stress or confusion or something like that, but they're mostly either public embarrassment or nightmares. I've been having a lot of nightmares, not positive dreams by any means.
I dreamed I dreamed my friend. I texted my friend in the morning, yo, I just dreamed about you. And then my friend texted me, yo, I just dreamed about you. And we just kind of had a yo moment.
The psychological definition of a dream is as vast and abstract as those we experience. Renowned psychologist Sigmund Freud extensively studied dreams and believed they are a manifestation of a person's deepest anxieties as well as desires. Reporter Chris Rios says despite years of study, why a person dreams is still shrouded in mystery.
Dreams, specifically nightmares, will happen although they are most common in childhood. They can still follow you into adulthood. One moment you are in your worst nightmare being chased and it finally catches up to you. You fall off the tallest building and then suddenly you wake up. You are covered in sweat. Perhaps staying up was a better idea. According to Mayo Clinic, some of the causes of nightmares are stress or anxiety, trauma, medications, and yes, even scary books and movies. The cause for Alex Johnson's nightmare was the protection of his family and unlocked doors.
Growing up in a single parent home, I spent a lot of time by myself, so I was very familiar and accustomed to carrying box cutters and little pocket knives and stuff, even around inside the house, just for an additional layer of personal security at 12. My mom worked 2 jobs, so on and so forth. So basically the nightmare itself is my room was downstairs, which of course again was really creepy because at the time it was not downstairs. But in any case, so my room was downstairs. Now, through the years of us living there, my brother being a teenager, etc., the lock on the door at that time was actually defunct. It didn't work. The door didn't really secure definitively by way of a deadbolt. So in the dream, I hear a noise. I wake up. I get whatever bladed object that I have by my bed at the time, and I'm really slowly, but surely, making my way, closing the distance to the basement door because I'm going to go investigate and see what noise is going on, what I heard in the garage. And as I get to the threshold of the door and I put my hand on the reach out to grab the doorknob, it flies open, like somebody kicks the door open, and there's two guys that come in and they start shooting me. Die in your dreams, you die for real, as the saying goes. So I'm laying down. I've been shot several times. I'm 12 years old. I've been shot several times. I'm laying on the ground up against the couch, and these assailants basically just kind of like rush past me and start to go upstairs. And the context of the dream, like I don't know if I was home alone or if my mom was in there or not, but I just remember very vividly the fear that was gripping me, not only of is there somebody else in the house that's going to be harmed, but also, is this real? Am I going to die?
Nightmares tend to occur most often during REM sleep, short for rapid eye movement. According to WebMD, between 2% and 8% of the adult population suffer from nightmares. Johnson was gripped with fear, and to this day, that door remains without a lock. Although Johnson does not live there anymore, the vulnerability still haunts him.
That dream I kind of had sporadically off and on for the next 3 years. It kind of was basically like something that haunted me kind of for almost eternity.
Next on our list, we have Javian Moore, whose furry friend went rogue in his nightmare. At the age of 6, Moore lived in Denver, Colorado. His neighbor had 2 Rottweilers who were gravely sick and whose appearance would haunt Moore.
They had 2 Rottweilers. One had cancer and the other one had tumors all over his back, big, and yeah, it was very crazy, like fur was off of him, but not off of him at the same time. Just looked like very messed up dogs.
According to the Sleep Foundation, roughly half of the children between the ages of 3 and 6 report frequent nightmares. Moore also had a Rottweiler, and in Moore's dream, his Rottweiler would clean up the spew from the infected Rottweiler. From there, things got worse.
You see the dog outside just over here messing up the other 2 dogs who was sick, just tearing them up. Me and my brother decided to lock the dog door where he couldn't get in through the back door. We locked all the doors. We locked the front door and the back door and the basement door. The dog eventually tried to come in, from scratching on the door to like jumping on it, from trying to get into the dog door, and then you just hear the banging on it, just the...
Moore had to protect himself and his family from what is no longer Moore's companion, but an infected monster.
All the glass shattered on the couch. Then you got the water on the couch. Our couch was about a tan color, but then the water from the plants made it like a dark brown. He came in, jumped on my mom's face and started biting her. Me and my brother didn't know what to do. Eventually, once he was done messing her up, we saw that he killed her. The dog turns around, and instead of having black spots on his tongue was completely black. Black eyes, nothing else. Looked terrible. From blood all on the brown spots of him, because Rots is black and brown. So he turned like a black and blood color red. From eventually me waking up in a pool full of sweat about 3 in the morning. My box TV playing Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, me rushing downstairs to my mom's room to see what she was doing, and she was knocked out in her bed with the dog right there.
According to Healthline.com, since the beginning of time, researchers don't know why we dream or what purpose it serves. Thankfully, Moore's dog did not turn out to be a hellhound. Getting enough sleep is important. You should talk to your doctor about nightmares if nightmares happen more than once a week. Nightmares affect your sleep, mood, or daily activity. If nightmares begin at the same time that you start a new medication, make sleep a priority. From mavradio.fm, I'm Chris Rios.
According to Medical News Today, here are 5 fast facts on dreams. We may not remember dreaming, but everyone is thought to dream between 3 and 6 times per night.
That's interesting.
Yeah, it's also thought that each dream lasts between 5 to 20 minutes.
Yeah, that's fascinating. I mean, I feel like sometimes they go longer than that because I remember them all night long, but 5 to 20 minutes, that's interesting.
Yeah, that is. And around 95% of dreams are forgotten by the time a person gets out of bed.
I can believe that.
That I kind of believe.
I very rarely don't believe any of my stories or my dreams.
Do you remember them ever? No?
Sometimes. Not last night, though.
Yeah, I remember mine actually quite frequently.
Oh, wow.
Dreaming can help you learn and develop long-term memories. That I did not know.
I believe it, though.
Yeah. Okay. And then blind people dream more with other sensory components compared with sighted people.
That's really interesting. I guess I wouldn't imagine how that would go. Yeah. Fascinating stuff.
All right. So we got reporter Chris Rios on the line. Chris, how we doing?
I'm doing great. How are you guys in the studio?
Good. So, Chris, what made you want to research dreams?
Well, simply because they're not really understood. I feel like dreams are something that we really don't even know much about. So I do believe it's kind of a mystery, and I think it's kind of fun.
Well, thanks so much, Chris. We appreciate you. Have a good evening. Stay safe out there.
Thank you.
Going to take a quick little break, but coming up now, we got another kind of creepy story about a little jail just across the river. Some people.
Yeah, I've been there, so I'm interested to hear a story on it.
Yeah, I've never been there, so.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's old, but it's a cool looking building.
It's Haunted Heartland 2022 on mavradio.fm.
Ow, ow, ow. What are you doing?
I'm like practicing my scary voices for Mav Radio's Haunted Heartland show. It's really getting me in the Halloween spirit.
Ten mucho miedo. Están escuchando mavradio.fm.
Just across the Missouri River, there is a jail that's been closed for 53 years. It's a favorite place for ghost hunters, psychics, and those who simply love history. The Squirrel Cage Jail is 3 stories high and known for its unique architecture. As reporter Lindsay Tague says, the octagonal-shaped building was meant to keep its prisoners from escaping, but it soon became something far more sinister.
Council Bluffs, Iowa is an average city with a rich historic background. With every aspect of history, there's bound to be myths created by the imaginations of locals and passed down to each new generation. In the heart of historic Council Bluffs area, built in 1885, lies the Potawatomi Jailhouse, better known as the Squirrel Cage Jail. This is home to not only one of 3 rotary jails remaining in the country, but possibly a home for some of the city's supernatural.
You'd have to rotate the entire structure to get inmates in or out.
The Lazy Susan type architectural design was a special creation for some prisons in the Midwestern part of the United States during the late 19th century. Cells in the jails were on wedges on a platform that rotated in a carousel-like fashion. To begin, there were only about 18 rotary jails in the country, all located in the Midwest. The museum's director for the Historical Society of Potawatomi County, Kat Slaughter, gives the history of the rotary cell used in Squirrel Cage.
It's a crazy piece of industrialization. Gears and chains is what moves the entire structure and manpower. That's it. There was a water motor at the beginning, but it burned out within the first 5 to 20 years of an 84-year of use as a county jail. So most of the time it's just people taking care of this entire structure.
However, due to safety reasons, the jail couldn't stay as a functioning rotary forever.
One entry and exit point, and that's how it worked up until 1960. But unfortunately, due to safety issues, that had to be changed for the last 9 years of use as the jail. They have to stop rotation in 1960 by order of the fire marshal because it's getting stuck, inmates could get injured.
With the uniqueness of how the cells would rotate, some of the inmates became creative with how they behaved when it came time for rotation. Council Bluffs Historical Society employee Gracie Goose gives insight on how a few inmates would orchestrate their escape.
A lot of the times it would cause injuries to the inmates because of they would get caught, like arms or feet or whatever would get caught in between the cells and they would get cut off or, pulled really hard. Inmates would tie sheets to the cell bars and and it would like strangle them when it would turn, so they would commit suicide almost as a hanging.
This unconventional structure served as a county jail in Iowa for over 8 decades, with it being deemed a historic landmark and later turned into a museum. But even after all the cells stopped rotating and the jail closed its doors, did all the inmates actually leave?
But I've heard footsteps enough that I've gone up to the next level to make sure like nobody else is around. I've been alone in the building, which I do quite a lot, and I'll hear doors slamming, whistling, footsteps again, that one's very popular for me, and then music playing.
I definitely believe that the jail is haunted.
Slaughter says that there are instances she's experienced that she wished she could scientifically explain, but she can't think of a reason.
At the beginning, I was probably more skeptic, and then you're working in the building alone with the front door closed, and you hear whistling. I had enough weird experiences in here that I can't write off in the way that I would like to write off.
Even Goose says she's experienced uncomfortable and unexplainable moments while working at the jail.
The first time I actually did a shift there, it was to cover for my coworker Kat, and she had to go run some errands, and I covered for a while. A paranormal group was setting up for an overnight tour type thing, paranormal investigation. And I'm sitting in the front office and just sitting there on my phone, scrolling through TikTok or whatever, and a female investigator walks in and she's like, "Oh my God, can you smell that?" I'm like, "No, what?" She's like, "It smells like strong floral perfume, like really strong floral perfume." I was like, "No, I don't smell it." I'm like, "I have perfume on, but it's not a floral perfume." And she was like, "I don't know, but it's like this ball right in front of the counter, pretty much in front of you." I was like, "Okay, well that's weird." She's like, "Can I smell your arms and make sure it's not your perfume?" I was like, "Yeah, sure." So she smells my arm and she's like, "No, it's definitely not your perfume."
Squirrel Cage Jail is an attraction that draws the attention of all those interested in the paranormal, including popular paranormal investigators like Zach Bagans from the Travel Channel's Ghost Adventures. These teams of investigators will stay for hours at the jail, trying to reach beyond and connect with whatever is still lurking within the halls.
You have a 4-hour investigation, an 8-hour, and a 12-hour.
Investigators reported that they have footage from their EVPs, or electronic voice phenomenon recordings, of spirits speaking with them. One question asked to a spirit by an investigator was, "What's your favorite food?" And you could very clearly understand the response of pizza coming from the recording.
The sounds of chains are also just, I think, kind of wild. I would love to have an explanation.
The paranormal experiences at the jail are common to say, at the least. But Goose says that there are still some non-believers despite them experiencing the unexplained themselves.
The craziest story I have heard at the Squirrel Cage Jail is actually with one of our members of the Historical Society, Dr. Warner, and he does not believe in anything paranormal. He does not believe that the jail is haunted at all. He's not against it or anything, but he just doesn't believe it. And he's a brilliant guy, brilliant. And one night he was at the jail taking the trash out, and he was alone. He had locked up the jail so nobody could come in or anything, and he set his keys down on the front counter where we take payments and everything. And he was taking out the trash, doing some cleanup, and he came back to grab his keys to go home. His keys were gone, completely gone. Nobody's there. And he's like, "What the hell? Where did my keys go?" And he finds them on the 3rd floor, and he hadn't gone up there at all.
With all the historic and paranormal aspects that come along with the jail, Slaughter says that a lot of interested tourists come and see it for themselves.
Yeah, we keep pretty busy. 30 to 60 a day during the summer. So a lot of people will stop in just to see the jail when they're traveling through. But we love having people come in.
Squirrel Cage Jail is known as a fascinating building filled with deep secrets and a complicated past. This place will forever be part of Council Bluffs history. Now it's under the care of the Council Bluffs Historical Society, and they are making it their mission to keep the jail open to the public so others can experience its rich history. Are you brave enough to enter the jail and see what kind of experience you're gifted with? Maybe it's all an illusion, a myth carried on for decades to attract tourists, or maybe these stories are a warning. Beware of the power of things unexplained. From Mav Radio, I'm Lindsay Tech.
Ring around the rosy.
The jail took just 6 months to complete and opened its first cell on September 11th, 1885. Among its prisoners were the horse thieves, forgers, and of course, the murderers. The Squirrel Cage Jail is open to the public for tours. And Lindsay, we're here right with you. Why is it important for this jail to stay open to the public?
Yeah, Jack, it's important for this jail to stay open because it's a key piece of Council Bluffs history. It was built in the 1800s, and it's I think it's really cool that it's one of 3 Rotary jails that are still remaining standing. Like, it started out with 18 in the country total, and now there's only 3, and one of those is in Council Bluffs. So that's really cool.
So is there anything new that you learned about the jail while recording this audio piece, and anything that surprised you?
Yeah, actually, I did not know this. The jail was built on the site of an old church morgue. So I think that really adds to the whole haunted aspect to it.
Oh, absolutely. And then finally, any special events the jail's holding for visitors during this Halloween season?
Yes, so actually tonight, tomorrow night, and Saturday night, they are holding a flashlight tour. So guests can come in and they pay admission and they can tour the jail with their flashlights, and it goes from 6 p.m. to 11 p.m.
Thank you.
Yeah, of course.
Fun one to listen to, and that's just one of many great stories we've had here throughout the course of the night, but still not over yet. Plenty of stories left to hear.
Yeah, now we're kind of switching gears. A little more, guess you couldn't say lighthearted, but not as a creepy story, but also a known spot amongst lots of people around the area, kind of like the Squirrel Cage Jail. But this next one, on September 23rd, one of Nebraska's favorite pastimes opens its gates for the 2022 season. Vala's Pumpkin Patch, an apple orchard, welcomes tens of thousands of visitors every year, where fall fanatics get their fill of pumpkin spice, hayrack rides, and acres of beautiful orange gourds, ripe for the picking. As reporter Maggie Johnston explains, this year, however, there's one seat missing, leaving the staff and the park itself a little quieter.
It all started out with a berry farm and a hayrack ride. Just 2 small components that grew into the country's largest pumpkin patch. The farm started out as a you-pick strawberry farm with fresh produce, then switched to a family attraction. Tim Vala said how they made that switch.
Our original attraction was the hayrack ride, and we got just a lot of positive comments about it, like how much fun it was to come out to a farm and actually go out and see the pumpkins on the vine and all that kind of stuff. And so that kind of gave us motivation to add a little bit more.
Tim and his beloved wife Jan Vala built Vala's Pumpkin Patch 38 years ago, but sadly, last year Jan passed away of a heart attack. Jan's best friend, Kathy Oldridge, says the second fall season without Jan hasn't gotten easier.
It affected me a lot because I was here that day. It was hard. I lost all my good times to come,
Kathy says that Jan was a down-to-earth, humble person who had a fun-loving, nerdy side. Jan was a happy person who brightened up the day just by being herself.
She loved Star Wars, fanatical about it. Her phone rang every Star Wars song for different girls. She loved Harry Potter. Oh my gosh. We went down to Universal Studios and she had one of those wands, the interactive wand, and oh my God. She was practically pushing kids out of the way to show them how to do it. Oh my gosh. She was funny. She was really fun.
Jan wasn't the typical boss of a large operation. She was someone who truly loved and cared for what she had built. She would go the extra mile to know each of the employees' names. She meant a lot to them, just as they meant a lot to her.
It was pretty tough on us, and not only the family, but our staff and employees, was really close to Jan and knew Jan really well. Our employees just want to keep that feeling of Jan up, It was just really a super nice person and really loved being around people. It was always friendly.
Kathy has a lot of fun memories with Jan, but one that sticks out was an answer to a particular question.
Probably after my first year, I said, "How do you do laundry?" 'Cause she was down here all the time. And she goes, "Kathy, I don't do laundry. I have 45 pairs of jeans. I have 45 shirts. I have 45 pairs of underwear and bras and a lot of socks." So that was always funny.
Tim said about 75% of Vala employees return every year, and it was mostly due to Jan and the culture she developed. Most guests would not recognize Jan because she would be working and wearing the Vala's signature orange shirt just like the other employees.
During the season, we have probably 1,100 to cover all the places and all the shifts and everything, but then there's only 50 year-round.
Jan dedicated her life to Vala's, making it into what it is today, the largest pumpkin patch in the country, with about 400 acres of land, 50 attractions, about 10 shops, and several places to eat, not to mention the fire pits available for rent. Visiting Vala's is a tradition for tens of thousands of families.
She'd put the kids to bed at night and lay out their clothes, and then she was up like till 2 in the morning doing all the book work and answering all the emails. I mean, this is what she did every night. But then Tim would get them ready and take them to school, and then she'd get up about 8:30 and start all over again. So it was to make their dream come true.
Now that Jan is gone, what is the famous pumpkin patch going to do without her? Well, her daughters have already started the process to take over.
I have 3 daughters that came back into the business, and 2 son-in-laws. They're really running the business right now. They're part owners, divided up between me and the 3 girls. So they're into it all the way.
That's not the only change. Vala's now has 2 new attractions dedicated to Jan. Stefan's Country Drive, which are replicas of antique Model T cars, and a very special carousel ride. Both of these rides were close to Jan's heart.
Jan, it was kind of a natural. She loved carousels, and she loved taking the grandkids on it and stuff.
The Vala family plans to honor Jan by continuing the family business, adding in more attractions, and keeping the farm a happy, family-centered place. Now more than ever, they want others to enjoy the fall season.
If you survey people in Nebraska, what's their favorite month, and October is like usually the number 1 month. It's fun to do something with your kids and take them out, and this just leads in the best month of the year, the fall harvest, and just having fun with your kids and family.
The loving memories of Jan and the Vala name will live on as part of the farm as more families come to create their own memories. Reporting from mavradio.fm, I'm Maggie Johnston.
Vala's Pumpkin Patch will close for the season October 31st. Maggie Johnston is near Gretna, where folks are enjoying the evening. Maggie, how's it going there?
Hello. It's awesome out here. It's very lively. So many people have come out, even though it's a Thursday night. And I'm actually standing in front of Dan's carousel ride, which has just emptied of people. So there's so many people here right now. But it's very exciting and fun.
So what can you tell us about Jan Vala and the legacy she and her family created?
Yeah, so Tim and Jan first started off with a U-pick berry farm, as you heard, and they kind of wanted to expand on that since strawberries are such a slow or a short growing season, and so they added pumpkins, and they were wondering how to sell those pumpkins. So they thought, let's add in a hayrack ride for people to enjoy, and it really took off from there. People love the hayrack ride. Between that and the train, those are their most popular attractions here that bring in the most people. And it's just such a staple, traditional ride for people to enjoy with their families.
Well, thank you so much, Maggie. Have a great night.
You too.
So, Jack, when's the last time you've been out to Vala's?
I went twice last fall. I really like the hayrack ride. It's kind of fun. You pick your pumpkins.
Oh, yeah.
I've heard, like, have you had, like, there's the cookies, like, in the cup?
No, I've seen the pictures.
Yeah, those
never
are
had those
cool.
out there.
Those are just pure yumminess.
I always get the caramel apples that are like big.
That's another popular.
Covered in caramel,
Yeah, that's a popular one.
Super good. But once you go out there, you got to get the whole experience, like you're saying, the hayrack rides.
Mm-hmm.
They got the cannons that you can shoot.
Yeah.
stuff out of,
Yeah, the apple cans. Aren't they like apples?
Yeah, pretty sure. Yeah,
those are good. And then growing up in grade school, every fall, like kindergarten, first, second, third, fourth grade, we always went to Val's Day. The whole school, just said, hey, take the day off, send 6 yellow school buses to Val's, and we all spent the day there. It was like the best day ever.
Yeah, see, I didn't get to experience that because I went to school in Grand Island, so we never came up for it.
No Val's in Grand Island.
No, there's like a pumpkin patch in St. Labori just outside of there.
Okay.
Definitely not nearly as exciting,
Yeah, and Val's is in a good spot, like a really good spot, because they get the Lincoln people and you get the Omaha people. That's what makes them so successful.
Yeah.
They get a big Lincoln population up there as well.
Yeah, so, I want to try to go out there, but I guess I got to hurry up October 31st.
Yeah, so you got
down for the season.
Friday, Saturday, Sunday.
Yeah, that's it. So we got some more great stories coming up here. So don't go anywhere. It's Haunted Heartland 2022 on mapradio.fm.
What will you have, little girl? Eye of newt or frog's breath? Do you have just chocolate? Yeah. I scream, you scream, we all scream for Haunted Heartland 2022 on mapradio.fm.
Literary genius Edgar Allan Poe is said to have lived as complex of life as his stories and poems. His Gothic tales and dark prose was some of the earliest examinations of human psyche. The Raven, first published in 1845, is amongst Poe's best work and his most popular works, and still reigns as one of history's most famous poems. Now, let's take a listen to Professor Jodine Brownlee as she shares her adaptation of the timeless message of love, loss, and profound grief.
Once upon a midnight dreary, I pondered weak and weary over many a quaint and curious volume of forgotten lore. While I nodded, nearly napping, suddenly there came a tapping, as of someone gently rapping at my chamber door. "'Tis some visitor," I muttered, tapping at my chamber door. Only this and nothing more. Ah, distinctly I remember, it was in the bleak December, and each separate dying ember wrought its ghost upon the floor. Eagerly I wished the morrow, vainly I had sought to borrow from my book surcease of sorrow, sorrow for the lost Lenore, for the rare and radiant maiden whom the angels named Lenore, nameless here forevermore. And the silken, sad, uncertain rustling of each purple curtain thrilled me, filled me with fantastic terrors never felt before, so that now, to still the beating of my heart, I stood repeating, "'Tis some visitor entreating entrance at my chamber door. Some late visitor entreating entrance at my chamber door." That is it, nothing more. Presently my soul grew stronger, hesitating then no longer. "Sir," said I, "or madam, truly your forgiveness I implore, but the fact is I was napping, and so gently you came rapping, and so faintly you came tapping at my chamber door, that I scarce was sure I heard you. Here I opened wide the door. Darkness there, and nothing more. Deep into that darkness peering, long I stood there wondering, fearing, doubting, dreaming dreams no mortal ever dared to dream before. But the silence wasn't broken, and the stillness gave no token, and the only word there spoken was the whispered word, 'Lenore?' Then I whispered, and an echo murmured back the word, 'Lenore.' Merely this, and nothing more. back into the chamber turning, all my soul within me burning. Soon I heard a tapping somewhat louder than before. Surely, said I, surely that is something at my window lattice. Let me see then. Let me see then what thereat is, and this mystery explore. Let my heart be still a moment, and this mystery explore. 'Tis the wind and nothing more. Open here I flung the shutter, when with many a flirts and flutter, in there stepped a stately raven of the saintly days of yore, just above my chamber door, perched and sat, and nothing more. Then this ebony bird beguiling my sad fancy into smiling by the grave and stern decorum of the countenance it wore. Though thy crest be shorn and shaving, thou, I said, art sure no craven, ghastly grim and ancient raven, wandering from the nightly shore. Tell me what thy lordly name is on the night's Plutonian shore. Quoth the raven, nevermore. Much I marveled this ungainly fowl, to hear discourse so plainly, though its answer little meaning, little relevancy bore. For we cannot help agreeing that no living human being ever yet was blessed with seeing bird above his chamber door. Bird or beast upon the sculptured bust above his chamber door, with such a name as Nevermore. But the raven sitting lonely on the placid bust spoke only that one word, as if his soul in that one word he did outpour. Nothing farther than he uttered, not a feather than he fluttered, till I scarcely more than muttered, other friends have flown before. On the morrow he will save me, as my hopes have flown before. Then the bird said, nevermore. Startled at the stillness broken by reply so aptly spoken, doubtless, said I, what it utters is only stock and store, caught from some unhappy master whom unmerciful disaster followed fast and followed faster till his songs one burden bore, till the dirges of hope that melancholy burden bore of nevermore. But the raven still beguiling all my fancy into smiling, straight I wheeled a cushioned seat in front of bird and bust and door. Then, upon the velvet sinking, I betook myself to linking fancy unto fancy, thinking that this ominous bird of yore, with this grim, ungainly, ghastly, gaunt, and ominous bird of yore, meant in croaking, nevermore. This I sat engaged in guessing, but no syllable expressing, to the fowl whose fiery eyes now burned into my bosom's core. This and more I sat divining, with my head at ease reclining on the cushion's velvet lining that the lamplight gloated o'er, but whose velvet violet lining with the lamplight gloating o'er. She shall press, nevermore. Then methought the air grew denser, perfumed from an unseen censer, swung by seraphim whose footfalls tinkled on the tufted floor. Wretch, I cried, thy God hath lent thee, by these angels he hath sent thee, respite, and nepenthe, from thy memories of Lenore. Quaff, oh quaff, this kind nepenthe, and forget this lost Lenore. Quoth the raven, nevermore. Prophet, I said, thing of evil, prophet still if bird or devil, whether tempest sent or whether tempest taught thee here ashore, desolate yet all undaunted on this desert land enchanted, on this home by horror haunted, tell me truly, I implore, is there balm in Gilead? Tell me, I implore. Quoth the raven, nevermore. Prophet, said I, thing of evil, prophet still if bird or devil, by the heaven that bend above us, by the God we both adore, tell this soul with sorrow laden, if within the distant Aden it shall clasp a saint and maiden whom angels name Lenore, clasp a rare and radiant maiden whom angels named Lenore. Quoth the raven, nevermore. Be that word of sign of parting bird or fiend, I shrieked upstarting, get thee back into the tempest and the night's Plutonian shore. Leave no black plume as a token of that lie thy soul hath spoken. Leave my loneliness unbroken, quit the bust above my door. Take thy beak from out my heart, and take thy form from off my door. Quoth the raven, nevermore. And the raven, never flitting, still is sitting on that pallid bust of Pallas just above my chamber door. And his eyes have all the seeming of a demon's that is dreaming, and the lamplight o'er him streaming throws his shadow on the floor. And my soul from out that shadow that lies floating on the floor shall be lifted nevermore.
The narrator's descent into madness is a common theme throughout Poe's writing. That's because the author himself lived with recurrent depression. What's more, like his poems and short stories, his untimely death is still a mystery. But it's thought that his battles with drugs and alcohol were the primary cause.
What appears on the outside to be just a beautiful historic train depot actually comes with some unexplained experiences. Reporter Gracie Goose tells us her stories as the main employee at the Rails West Museum in Council Bluffs, Iowa, and other encounters from a past employee. It's not your typical haunting that has known ghosts. What is experienced is thought to be residual hauntings from all the unknown lives that have passed through the depot.
What looks like a typical old museum actually has a lot of interesting history that comes with it. The Rails West Museum used to be the Rock Island Depot from 1899 to 1971. Dr. Richard Warner is a local historian who knows the long history of the depot.
In order to really fully appreciate it, we have to put ourselves back into the 19th century. The problem is, we all know how important trains are. They build America. Yeah, we know that. But we know it so much we take it for granted. But if you go back to the middle part of the 19th century, having a rail line would be like having the internet today. So if you got passed with the rail line, that'd be like having no internet. And, you know, I'm old enough that at first I tend to probably scoff and say, well, I got along before, I could do it again. But think about that for a second.
The depot had thousands of people pass through during its operating years as a passenger and freight depot. Many men came and went to and from war through the years, and as well as other numerous energies. Who knows what stories people had for passing through that depot. The depot was part of the major railroad development that Council Bluffs was experiencing during this time.
A lot going on in Council Bluffs in 1869. And then we had those other railroads come in, and we prospered. I mean, our population doubled in just a few years. I think it was 1880 alone, we had like 1,200 building permits go up. It was more than just a positive attitude. It was almost like a giddy euphoria. To go back and look at some of that literature coming out of Council Bluffs and in our newspaper, I really think the prevailing notion is not only would Council Bluffs be the biggest city in Iowa, we were going to become to the Great Plains what Chicago would become to the Great Lakes region just 25 years earlier. We were unstoppable. And then there's no one single reason that changed. There's a lot of reasons, which are probably beyond the scope of this, but at that point, euphoria was off the charts.
The Rock Island Depot is one of the last standing depots in Council Bluffs. When you step inside, you feel as though you are transported back in time, and you most definitely don't feel alone.
Physical touch point to generations in the past. When I come in here, I think of the people and just think of the people arriving at Council Bluffs for the first time. They've never been here. They came from all over, and they each one had their own reasons for coming, their own motivation. But now they're here. This is the first thing they saw. Those guys going off to war. Some didn't come back. the guys are returning and how excited they are. And we've got pictures, I'm sure you've seen them around here, of the ground's just loaded with all the presidential candidates coming through, people going to visit relatives. Particularly if I'm in here by myself, and I just think of the people. It's more than the architecture. It just takes me right back.
Although there are no documented deaths that have happened at the depot, there are still plenty of unusual things that happen. A past employee of the museum, Ashley Smith, has had plenty to make you rethink spending time in the museum.
When I walk into that depot before I'm opening it, I feel as if someone was just waiting for me in there. The back area and the upstairs where employees are allowed, I always felt like someone was watching me. I was being watched by somebody. The area where the port core chair was, the breezeway, where the model trains are, I always felt uneasy being there alone, but I had to vacuum back there and dust, so I got through it.
I myself, a new employee to the museum, I've already had some creepy things happen while I'm there all alone. I only started working there in June of this year, but I've heard heavy footsteps walking in the attic above me, shoes shuffling on the old marble floors, voices talking in the women's waiting room, and the most spine-chilling of all, when I was walking out of the bathroom to grab some cleaning supplies, I heard a man say my name in a very low and slow voice, Gracie. The building itself isn't the only haunted parts of the museum. The train cars also give you the feeling of people still being in them.
The mail car, I do not like going down by where the bathroom is. Do not like it whatsoever. Will avoid it at all if I can. I never got an uneasy feeling in the Rock Island car that's out there. It was always just comfortable being in, I guess. The Omaha Club car, that one has something in it. I don't know what it is. You feel like you're being watched in there as you're going, inside of it, and then through that little hallway and then out into the open where, passengers would sit. I took a picture one year. I had found one just digging around and looking for memorabilia, and I found this picture where it is the inside of the mail car. There's passengers in there. The lights are lit up. It is beautiful black and white picture. And I took it into the club car. I held it up and took a picture as if it was like a before and after.
The energies that are in the depot did not waste any time showing the employees that they are there. Specifically, a man in the staff back room.
I felt as if someone was standing on the stairs staring at me and like to scare me, to make me aware that they were there without, making a noise or anything. There was one instance where I had my middle son and my youngest daughter. We were at the depot in the back, and there was a stomp from, like a footstep from up above, upstairs. And my son goes, "Mom, what was that?" I was like, "Oh, it's just the guy upstairs. Do you want to go see?" And he's like, "Sure." So I take them upstairs, and he's like, "Mom, there's no one here." I'm like, "I know. It's a ghost. And it's okay. He doesn't scare me anymore. He's very nice." What I found out about the spirit was that he used to handle the luggage back there. That's where it was kept.
It may seem like the spirits only show themselves to the employees, but that isn't the case. I've had visitors come in and think I've said something to them, but I hadn't, and usually they don't know that it's haunted.
I've seen friends capture amazing evidence from there. They caught one of the doors opening that you really can't move it unless you forcefully move it. I've seen equipment light up in there. I've seen equipment light up in the mail car, and I've seen equipment light up in the Rock Island car. Inside the depot, it lights up in both waiting areas, the women's and the men's area.
The Rails West Museum can seem like a fun place to bring your kids and a train enthusiast, but when you start to spend more time in the place, you see and feel it come alive with the past energies that came through the Rock Island Depot. You learn how to keep peace with the spirits, and soon enough, you'll have an attachment to the place.
Whenever I would go to the depot, I'd always say, "Hi, it's me. We're here again. Let's have a great day. I hope we have a lot of people there."
The Rails West Museum in Council Bluffs, Iowa is definitely an interesting spot with unexplained hauntings that is underestimated for what is lurking in its shadows.
I don't know who is haunting it. I don't know why. But I think with more investigations that could happen there, since it is not a very well-investigated spot, unlike the Squirrel Cage Jail, I think with more investigations and more research, we could determine what is at the depot for sure.
Consider stopping by the museum to see if you have any experiences. I'll be there waiting for you, and who knows who else will be too. For mavradio.fm, I'm Gracie Goose.
If you do want to visit the Rails West Museum, it has an abundance of artifacts throughout the building and the restored train cars relating to the depot's history through the different time periods. It's a great stop for Grandpa wanting to revisit the good old days, your little brother who is obsessed with trains, and yourself if you want to experience the hauntings. Gracie Goose is currently at the museum. Gracie, what can you tell us about where you're at right now?
Dayton and I are here right now, and honestly, it's pretty creepy being here at night. I'm not used to being here at night, so it's a whole different vibe right now than what I'm used to, honestly.
So you're usually there during the day, huh?
Yes, usually here during the day, during the normal operating hours on Saturday and Sundays. So being here at 8 o'clock at night is a little strange.
And can you describe the appearance of the building?
So right now, the building has been restored to what it would have originally looked like. We have all original wood. The stone floors are still here. And pretty much everything else has been kept up to look as realistic as possible as what the depot would have been like during the early 1900s. You honestly feel like you're being transported back in time.
And can you share a little bit of extra history about the place?
So actually, something that a lot of people don't know is that this isn't the original depot. This is a rebuild of one of the depots. The first depot that was at this location got blown up when a train car carrying dynamite got ignited and destroyed the entire place. And there was no deaths or no injuries really that are known of, but it did cause them to have to completely redo the depot, and this is how this one came to be in 1899.
Interesting. Well, thank you so much, Gracie. Stay safe out there.
Thank you.
Still feeling creeped out there, Jack?
Yeah, a little bit. It's been a really fun show to be a part of, and almost done, but not quite done yet.
Yeah, not yet. We got another creepy tale to come up about a infamous park here in Omaha, and there's word, Jack, that we got a reporter out there that's a little bit freaked out right now.
I think he's a little frightened, and maybe we'll hear from him. Maybe he's hiding off in the car. I don't know.
Yeah, we'll see if he makes it that long. Don't go anywhere. It's Haunted Heartland 2022 on mavradio.fm.
Going strong for more than a decade. You're listening to Haunted Heartland on mavradio.fm.
Haunted Heartland 2022 on mavradio.fm, where the only things to fear are copyright lawyers.
Let's hide in here. Hopefully they can't find us. Next time you want to do something scary, we're just going to stay home and listen to the highly produced Haunted Heartland radio show on mavradio.fm. Shh. Someone's coming.
lies a forest that's steeped in urban legend, whether in the trees, the bungalows, or even in the very steps you might walk. Hummel Park is no stranger to these myths and is no stranger to Haunted Heartland. Jackson Piercy reports.
Hummel Park is a name that is synonymous with urban legends here in the Omaha area. Since its opening in 1930, the park has been at the center of a number of mysterious stories that have their tendency to travel quickly.
Since I'm not from here, I have only heard what other people have heard, basically. And when I moved here, I heard about Hummel Park pretty quick. It has a lot of legends. Just kind of sitting in lab and talking to students and what to do here in Omaha, that kind of thing. And, stay away from Hummel Park.
That was Dr. James Wilson, a biology professor at UNO. He also created and teaches a class called Science and Critical Thinking, where students are asked to tackle conspiracies and other strange phenomena head-on. Being from Southern California, he was not acquainted with the myths, but living in Omaha has shone a light on the legends surrounding the park.
There were these albinos living in the park, and they either eat children, steal children, whatever, things like that. I heard about trees that supposedly were used for lynchings that supposedly lean out into the road or something because of the old weight of the people that were hanging from the trees. The stairs, of course, the morphing stairway, that you supposedly cannot count the same number of steps up as down and get the same number.
Though Dr. Wilson thinks most of these stories are, to put it in his words, complete nonsense, he has found some historical grounds for at least one of the stories of the park.
So in the 1950s, I think in 1955, a guy named Donald Gibson was riding his motorcycle in Hummel Park, and he crashed it and then died. And he was albino. The picture in his yearbook is clearly albino. And so that is probably the origin of that story, is that there was an albino teenager kid died there in the park. And then from the 1950s till now, it got turned into there's albinos living in the trees and, eating people.
Despite Dr. Wilson's skepticism, there are still many who believe the park's legends. Former MAV radio reporter Brandon Mosley tells something of a different story concerning his experience covering the park for the 2010 installment of Haunted Heartland.
But it was getting dark, and I said, before we get out the car and pull it up, I said, okay, here goes the rules. This ain't gonna be no scary movie, nobody's tripping. If I run, you run. Don't ask questions. When one goes, we go. So I said, if I take off running, just run. We'll figure it out later. We start doing the phone call back to the studio. They bring out the Ouija board and stuff like that. And then you start hearing noises. So I'm thinking it's a deer or whatever. I don't know, because I say, hey, y'all, y'all hear that? So it got to one point where in my head, and I will always say it was a deer. There was no person walking around. It was a deer. So we're doing the call back. Everything's going good. And at one point, I don't know what happened. I just jumped in the car.
Even though Mosley himself won't go back to Hummel Park because of that experience, he still wasn't above saving a good scare for himself.
But me now, knowing I have the advantage because everybody's scared, I just reach around where the driver is and grab him a little bit. He freaks out. You can't do that, man. You can't do that. I was like, it's all good.
Stories like that are what brought Hummel Park its reputation amongst the public. Though it is difficult to get past that reputation, Dr. Wilson assures us that there are perfectly reasonable scientific explanations of all the phenomena at the park.
The trees leaning out into the road, as a biologist, trees along the road lean out. That's what they do. They're looking for sunlight, and if you grow out into the road a little bit, you get more sunlight. And so trees everywhere grow into the road, but the steps are kind of broken, and one side might have a side that's broken, another side doesn't. I definitely fell victim to counting stairs up, and then you reach a stair that has 2 or 3 steps into the next stair, and I counted my steps, and I shouldn't have because I wasn't going upstairs.
Dr. Wilson's answer to the supernatural? It's fairly simple in his eyes. Ghosts are not the result of petulant spirits, but more the result of our paranoid brains filling in the blanks. In light of that, Dr. Wilson has some advice for any potential ghost hunters that want to go down to the park.
Turn on all the lights. Just go turn the lights on. If there's a ghost, why does he care if the lights are on or off? So if a ghost is going to come out, better to have him come out in the light where you're not going to make a mistake.
In the end, however, through all the ghosts and goblins, there is one constant that urban legends have: people to tell the stories.
There are scary things in life, but ghosts and paranormal things are not. That's not high on the list. It's more crime and badness of humanity.
For Mav Radio, I'm Jackson Piercy.
It feels almost poetic. I mean, where we go searching for scares, we forget the common denominator for all these ghost stories. People to see them and people to tell the tale. Where does human imagination end and the real paranormal activity begin? We may not have all the answers, but we do have our reporter Jackson Piercy live on the scene. Jackson, you believe in these Humboldt Park myths or no?
Doing all the research, I've been in the park a couple times, and believe it or not, I didn't find any albinos. I didn't find any ghosts of lynchings or anything like that, but the stairs are, they're a little tricky.
And then what do you think makes the forest so unnerving for some people, even our reporter Luke?
No, he is not messing with the forest. It is pitch black out here. Like I can't see. If I didn't have my car right next to me, I wouldn't be able to see my hand in front of my own face. It is dark. And with these kind of things where it's dark, your brain starts to fill in the gaps. And when you're in a giant gap, you can find the most terrible things. Ooh.
And what do you think makes Humboldt Park stories so special compared to other tales you've heard before?
Driving out here in the middle of the night, it's almost like oppressive the way it kind of hangs over the road, this pitch black, like massive, like nothing almost. And with the stories, the stories aren't true. It's complete nonsense, but it's still, we live in a post-Blair Witch Project society. So, being in the forest in the middle of the night, even if you don't believe the stories, it's still a little freaky,
Yeah, all right. Thanks, Jackson, for the time.
Hey, thanks for having me.
You can't pay me all the money in the world to go to Humboldt Park after 6 p.m.
Man, I've gone out there in the afternoon and I'm freaked out there.
Yeah, that's a no-go for me. I'll go to Zorinsky, I'll go everywhere else, but I am not going to Humboldt Park.
Yeah, well, and it doesn't help either that it's almost like the middle of nowhere,
Yeah, he kind of slid that Blair Witch Project reference, and that's what it made me think of. If you guys have ever seen the movie, it's creepy woods at night, kids running around, filming. Yeah, that was a really real similarity.
Well, and it sounded like Luke was the original one to be freaked out, but it kind of sounds now like
Jackson's
all of them are a little bit too.
They're all a little rattled. Hey, Jackson's brave for going out there at night, especially around Halloween.
Well, better him than me, I guess, Jack.
Yeah, I am comfortable here.
Well, we got one final story for the evening. Our own producer right here in the studio with us, Michael A.C., has our next story. It's all about North Omaha.
October 2022, North Omaha. The stereotypes say that it's a dangerous neighborhood. If you want to be rude, people consider it the black neighborhood. When we see North Omaha in the news, we mostly see negativity, microaggressions. They keep associating crime and poverty with the area. Not to say that it doesn't happen, but that's almost always the first thing people say about the place. That's why everyone said I lost my mind when I decided to move up here. It couldn't be any worse than living downtown. I just tolerated an entire year of crack addict neighbors in a downtown crap high-rise apartment building. I have to admit, there is something a little spooky about my block, and perhaps it's because I moved into a building that was once a convent for nuns. It's the kind of setting that recalls horror movies from the 1970s. I've been living in North Omaha since August, right when the semester began, and I knew Haunted Heartland was on the horizon. So I began chasing local stories to find the most ominous tale. With so many classmates saying I could get killed up here, why not try for the most dangerous story I could find? Just a few blocks away is a landmark so ominous, eerie, Potter's Field. The cost of funerals, caskets, headstones, they're all ridiculously expensive. And long ago, Potter's Field was a designated graveyard for the poor, the unclaimed, and the unknown. Every major city in America once had a Potter's Field. There's a Potter's Field right here in North Omaha, right across from Forest Lawn Cemetery. When I told my faculty advisor that my first lead was there, she joked. She said she was excited to see what we could dig up. That was a pun, by the way, and the pun was intended. But what I discovered was more, much more than dust and bones of society's rejects. It was much bigger than I imagined. This is Michael A.C. with Spirits of North Omaha. For weeks, I was struggling to find something tangible on Potter's Field. I couldn't find anything other than an entry on Wikipedia. Chris Library didn't have very much, and I can tell you it was a heck of a time for the Dale Clark Library to close. Even if they had something, I was just banging my head against the wall for days. The ghosts of the North Omaha Potter's Field were just that. I was chasing absolutely nothing, and it was infuriating. I began to wonder if looking for paranormal activity was worth my time. Eventually, I found one lead, a graveyard enthusiast by the name of Marta Dawes. She could probably point me in the right direction.
There actually is a house, now that I'm thinking about it. My husband actually knew somebody that lived in this house off of Fontenelle Boulevard and Martin, I think. It's a historic house, and he knew somebody that lived there, and they always said they felt the house was haunted. One of the older houses in the neighborhood. I really do think that there are a lot of houses that do have paranormal activity in them, and you just don't hear about it.
I didn't get much from Marta when inquiring about Potter's Field, but she did give me some insight on the neighboring plot.
I have heard from others that the chapel at Forest Lawn, the old chapel, and it was the crematory at one time, people tell me that it is extremely freaky to walk around in there, and they hear things, and I wouldn't be surprised, since it was a crematory, that there might be something there.
All right, now we're getting somewhere. This whole Ghostbusters business isn't a well-documented thing, but if one person hears the tale, there must be a whole community that's heard it. That led me to a North Omaha historian by the name of Adam Fletcher Sassy. Sassy operates the North Omaha History website, and not only is he an expert on North Omaha's history, he used to live there. Sassy's website documented several ghost stories in the North Omaha area. Some of them were right up the street from where I live. For instance, the Metro Community College Fort Omaha campus is apparently haunted by several of its former occupants from its days as a military base. Also, once upon a time by North High was a 6-block healthcare campus. There were tunnels on that campus connecting 20 buildings, one of them an orphanage, another a sanitarium, and another one an old folks' home. It closed in 1976. Apparently, the residents near that former site still hear banging and clanging below their houses from the tunnels. I asked Sassy about Potter's Field, expecting to hear a similar story. Instead, the tale was pointing away from the spirits and more towards a society that was less than respectful.
Generally speaking, now there are a couple of anomalous African-American burials in other corners of the cemetery, but they were not given the primary spots. They were not allowed to be buried in the primary spots of the cemetery. So a lot of the headstones are missing from that African-American section. Don't know why. Maybe they were never put in. Maybe they were removed maliciously. It's hard to say. But the other thing worth noting is that for the number of burials in Prospect Hill Cemetery that we know belong to African Americans, it's not equivalent to the number of African Americans who have ever lived in Omaha. We know that African Americans were buried at other cemeteries in Omaha, including Laurel Hill, which is an important cemetery in South Omaha for Black burials. But we don't know where other Black people in Omaha were buried.
The North Omaha's Potter's Field is best known as the resting place for Will Brown. Of course, you should know who Will Brown is by now, and if you don't, shame on you. Derek Shadle was just talking about Will Brown a few minutes ago, and you should have been paying attention. But just to recap, Will Brown was a Black man accused of sexually assaulting a white woman and was lynched.
There was never a trial. His trial was by Judge Lynch, and it just never happened, so we don't know. What we do know is that Will Brown had severe arthritis, rheumatoid arthritis, that literally wrecked his physical demeanor. His hands were incapable of grasping things. He was visited by Harrison Pinkett, who is an African-American lawyer associated with Omaha's NAACP for decades. Pinkett went and saw him. He was one of the last people to see him before he was involved, or before he was lynched. And Pinkett said that he was in such a physical state of inability that it was surprising to see him standing in his cell, let alone to be able to conduct this heinous crime. So there was literally no evidence that Will Brown was involved in the crime that he was accused of.
And to tell you the truth, I was starting to feel a little disrespectful searching for the Stave Puft Marshmallow Man under the circumstances. People have been burying their dead in what we know to be North Omaha, not just for decades or generations, but centuries. So much civilization that would become Omaha began right where North Omaha is today.
The Mormons in 1846, they come across the river. They're pulling carts. They have one oxen apiece at most. At least you have one lady pulling a cart behind her with her 3 kids walking behind that. They have walked to Florence from Illinois, from New York State. I mean, they are walking this whole way. It's crazy. So you got these folks coming in. 1846, they get permission to camp on the western side of the Missouri River. That was called Indian Territory at that point, because it hadn't been treated, it hadn't been stolen by the United States, however you want to phrase that, it hadn't happened. Well, that winter in 1846, they got in, the Mormons did. They went up to Mormon Bridge Road. They laid out a little town right there on the side of the hill. This town had 20 blocks. Like literally, they carved out the streets out of the sod, out of the prairie. They carved it out. They put in 20 blocks, including a town square, a school, a firehouse, all kinds of stuff. And in these 20 blocks, they had houses, they had cabins, they had tents, and they had made a town. Everybody had their lot. Like, it wasn't the Wild West. They were founding a town. And when I say everybody, we're talking about 3,600 people. They got there in April. They had it all set up by May. Dude, people started dying right away. They had been dying on the way there. So they started burying them right there on the hillside.
Hypothetically, I could be sleeping above not just one grave, but many graves. To think that time could have forgotten so many graveyards. Could it be? Might it be? That some, most of, or possibly all of North Omaha were graves, and that we simply moved in above them.
There's no respect for the dead, right? But we still pretend to. So one of the things that you're buying when you buy a cemetery plot is perpetuity, right? That cemetery will always be maintained, and that the people in there will always be in there. So no matter who's died, hypothetically, they should always be recognizable. When that tombstone goes in, boom, that you're not just paying for that tombstone right now so you can come and see it, put flowers there, spend time talking to it, do whatever you do. You're also paying for your great-great-great-great-grandchildren to come to that opportunity as well, or for some historian to come looking on it later on, or, right? All these variables.
It really makes me wonder at the end of our lives, if we really truly leave a legacy behind when we die, or are we just holding spots for the next duplex? Here's Marta on the possibility of our graves becoming a future site for a coffee shop.
I wouldn't like to see it, but I definitely think it's going to happen to a lot of places. There is a small family cemetery out past on the way to Fort Calhoun, and it's called the Shipley Cemetery. That has been mostly taken care of by the family, but it's really disappearing because it's just impossible for one family to take care of a graveyard. There's one out on 97th and Rainwood Road, Union Cemetery. That also is taken care of by somebody in the family. He's getting old. Eventually, I'm sure that's just going to be turned into a house. I mean, it's just the way everything goes.
Suffice to say, we got it wrong. We got it all wrong. I got it wrong. I didn't exactly get a ghost story for you. Sorry. Sorry, but not sorry. I know, I was supposed to scare you. Maybe I did, I don't know. But this is more important. You see, civilization can be a really strange thing. We all live to create some sort of legacy and hope to create some sort of impact. And we'd be denying it if we didn't, because we obsess over ourselves all the time on social media and through our trivial ambitions. I'd like to think I have some sort of legacy. I like to think that I made a world a better place for someone. But at the end of the day, there's an even greater chance that centuries from now, my headstone is going to be buried beneath a Best Buy in the year 5762. The thing to remember is this. The departed. They were once me and you. They worked their butts off to make a living. They created things that touched lives. They had hopes and dreams, just like us. And perhaps some of them worked late into the night trying to accomplish a college education, just like yours truly. Some of them had friends and family that they knew and loved. And sometimes the way we look at certain neighborhoods comes from a very entirely wrong angle.
It was a quiet street, lots of trees. There was a big plot of land across the street from us, and we knew those neighbors, we knew the other, you knew people and you had friends in those days. I don't think I ever got to know neighbors. Like,
I talk about the North Omaha community, and that's the whole big corner from 72nd to Dodge to the river to the county line. That's North Omaha. So when people say the neighborhood, what people don't recognize, especially in Omaha, is that North Omaha has more than 40 distinct neighborhoods. The Belvedere neighborhood, the Miller Park neighborhood is right next to that. The Minnelusa neighborhood is right next to that. The Florence Field neighborhood is right next to that. But people don't separate it that way. We don't understand that in Omaha. We just think North Omaha, one big thing. It's like, nope, stop that right now. North Omaha is a community made up of neighborhoods.
This morning, when I left for class, it was a little cold. The leaves were blowing, but it was sunny, and it was colorful and brilliant. This really isn't a bad place to live at all. The spirits of North Omaha don't live at night. They live at night, but also in the daytime. They live in the past, they live in the present, and they live in the future. Its energy lives on. The spirit of North Omaha lives in every person that ever called it home. It's not a bad place to be at all. It's good to be home. For mavradio.fm, this is Michael A.C.
Well, it was a great story, Michael, and really appreciate it. Anything else you want to tell us that you didn't get to cover in the report itself?
Well, there were so many civilizations that had come over there in their travels. One thing that he did mention that would have probably taken another 15 minutes is just the whole idea that there is no respect for the dead. I went into this thing looking for a ghost story with the whole Bill Murray immaturity kind of mentality for it, trying to be a smart aleck and trying to, create a, Scooby-Doo kind of adventure. And it really didn't work out that way, because the more I found out about it, the more I knew that these were living, breathing people once upon a time. And if somebody went to go look for my corpse and decided to make fun of me, I think I would want to haunt them too. And considering that I live inside a former convent for nuns, I better watch where I step. So it was kind of a thing where that's not the story. The hilarity behind it and the, the fear factor, all of that, I think we just needed to take a look exactly what the story was. And the spirits are not just something to be feared, but also to be revered and respected.
Yeah, well, thank you so much, Michael. It was a great story.
Thank you.
Jack, any final thoughts? Another great, successful Haunted Heartland 2022. What was your thoughts?
Yeah, it was a blast. It was my first Haunted Heartland, and I'd been excited for a couple weeks now. And yeah, all my expectations coming into this were met and exceeded. This was a really fun event with a lot of talent here at the University of Nebraska Omaha with storytelling and just putting a really great audio story together. Everybody did just a fantastic job. It was awesome to hear and just fantastic to hear all of the different stories and all the different kinds of just creepy eeriness that swept through us through the entire night. And capping off with AC, you had a great story, and it was, each story was fun to listen to in its own way, and that's what makes this event so special, is because, we had, 12 stories tonight?
Yeah, 12,
and they were
13,
12
yep.
just completely different stories, but they all had their own angle that made it just a great story to listen to. And I think, everybody who had anything to do with putting this whole thing together, tip of the cap to you. Fantastic work.
Yeah, we want to thank Lindsay Tague. She did our social media for us tonight. Our executive producer, Jodine Brownlee, and our faculty advisor. She does so much for us to make this all possible. Our producer, Michael AC. He was also a reporter, so he's doing double duty, and he's got to sit in here and listen to me and Jack banter all the time. And he's probably sick of it.
Put up with our shenanigans for long enough.
That's right. So, and then you, Jack, for sitting in here with me, anchoring, but just a bunch of great stories, and educational.
Everybody out in the field.
All the reporters putting in the time. It's a lot of work putting these stories together, hunting down people to interview and doing the research and writing the script. So, and then to everyone that tunes in and listens, thank you to that too.
This isn't the last time it's going to be on the air.
That is true. It will be airing again on Halloween. I believe at 6 o'clock. We still have to schedule that, but watch our socials. We'll be posting it
Dracula
when it does
playlist
re-air
as well.
Yeah, and then starting tomorrow night at 7, we have production by the Chicago House Theater. Kara Davidson and Kevin O'Donnell put together a Dracula audio play in 10 episodes. We'll be playing that all weekend. Tomorrow night, the first 2 episodes at 7. And then we got 4 episodes Saturday starting at 6, and then a Sunday matinee of 4 episodes at 2 o'clock, and then we'll be airing it around Halloween as well. So we want to thank everyone for tuning in, listening. Hopefully this got everyone kind of in the Halloween mood. And
go home and watch a scary movie.
That's right. And I'm going to try to attempt to sleep tonight, but I probably won't.
Yeah, I'll be tossed and turning thinking about dreams and ghosts and
Hummel
Park, and there's 480 stairs going up and 479 going down.
But we just want to thank everyone. It's been an awesome night. So we are going to sign off. So thanks to everyone.
Thank you guys for tuning in.
It's Haunted Heartland 2022 on mavradio.fm.
I dwell in a lonely house I know that vanished many a summer ago and left no trace but the cellar walls, and a cellar in which the daylight falls. Thanks for listening tonight to Haunted Heartland 2022. A very special thanks goes out to our reporters in the field: Gracie, Jamie, Dayton, Maggie, Jackson, Chris, Derek, Lindsay, Luke, and Hannah. We'd also like to thank our hosts, Austin Ulmer and Jack McGonigal, Michael AC, who ran the show tonight in the producer's seat. Until next year, have a scary, spooky, and happy Halloween.